Yeah.
Okay, ready? All right. We're recording, right? Okay, go sit down. All righty. Taking full advantage of God's opportunities that He places in our path to win victories for the Lord. I mean, everything is human. Some Christians are so afraid to say anything or do anything. They're afraid they're going to offend people. Listen, if you don't get over that, you will never win anybody for Christ. The devil loves Christians that are afraid. He's the one that came up with the image of this little frail looking girl who has her face hanging on the floor and her clothes all the way down to the floor, and she's sad, sitting in a corner. Nobody wants to play with Lulu, whoever. But that's the image the devil came up with a Christian. Man, that is not a Christian. The Bible tells us that we are full of power, the power of God. Listen, we have authority. It's about time that the Christians started taking the authority that God has placed within them. Listen, if you want power in your right hand, you're not going to get it by shrinking away from the world and falling away from every fight that the devil sends your way. Listen, a good pastor friend of mine said, if you're ever going to stand face to face with Jesus, you're going to have to stand toe to toe with the devil. Amen? And that means taking opportunities that God sends your way, applying those things in battle. Look, the Bible tells us to what's that word it uses? Contend for the faith. That means, man, you get up, you confront people. You confront people. Listen, I can't say that loud and long enough. You confront people with your ideas of what Christianity is supposed to be. Otherwise, you will always be this little weak thing standing in a corner someplace where the devil has got you marked for being stupid, easy to push around, somebody to walk on like a doormat. Listen, there's a reason why John 7:24 says, judge a righteous judgment. That's part of the power that the Lord placed into our hand. Listen, Peter knew these things. He grabbed a sword, man, and he whacked off somebody's ear with that sword. Now the Lord, of course, put the ear back on, and he says, don't fight, because my kingdom is not of this world. Listen, the battle that we're fighting is not physical, but it sure is spiritual. If Peter had done that in the spirit, man, he would have been a winner. He would have been admired in the eyes of the Lord rather than being rebuked by the Lord. You know, that's the kind of thing that we want to do. Listen, we wage battle in the spirit. We wage battle with our words. My thing's going off. My computer's going off now. I let it time out. Anyway, listen to this. Peter walked on the water. He took full advantage. He took full advantage of the opportunity that the Lord placed in his way. God does this on purpose. He does these things on purpose. Matthew 14, verse 22, I'm starting here. Jesus walks on the water. And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him into the other side. This was the Sea of Galilee, in that day it was called. The Great Sea. That's had several names. The Sea of Tiberias. It was the greatest freshwater, the greatest body of fresh water, I think, in the world, if I'm remembering right, the biggest. And told him to go. And anyway, verse 23. And when he had sent the multitude away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit. And they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. 28. And Peter answered him and said, Lord. Now look, most of us would not have seen an opportunity here. Most of us would not have seen it. It would have passed us right on by. But not Peter. Peter was one who launched out into the deep. He explored every avenue of the possibilities of God. He explored every avenue of the possibilities of God. He took advantage of those opportunities that the Lord placed in his way. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me to come unto thee on the water. And he said, come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. Amen. And we all know that he sank. He began to sink when his mind got off of Christ. And he was afraid. He began to be afraid. Listen, that's what causes us to shrink back, and that's what causes us not to be able to stand up, and that's what causes us not to do the righteous judgments that God has called us to do, that he's called us to do, to make those righteous callings in God. Listen, you got to straighten out. You got to answer every triumph of the devil. You got to answer every question from the enemy. Don't let anything slide by, because see, when the enemy gets his foot in the door, man, he'll have your whole house if you don't do something about him. Amen. So don't be afraid. Stop being afraid. Go out and do what the Lord has said. Stand up. Get on the. You know, when you get to be afraid, call out like Peter did. Call to the Lord and say, Lord, save me. And the Lord will rebuke you, just like he did Peter. O thou of little faith, he said. And when they come into the ship, the wind ceased. Then they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying, of a truth, thou art the Son of God. You know, you really don't have to wait until your whole world has fell apart. You don't have to wait till Jesus shows up with a great miracle to realize that we have power in God, and that we are winners in the Lord, and that our opinion counts. Listen to me, church. Your opinion counts, especially you preachers. God has given you the ability to judge righteous. He has called us in these last days, like the Bible tells us, that the pastor of the last day, there's going to be a pastor that's going to come in the spirit of Elijah, and he's going to judge the nations, the Bible tells us. And he has given us not unrighteous, but right. And he's going to say, one of the things he's going to say is, fear God, and give reference to him who is holy. He's going to teach people to do that. Man, the church isn't doing that anymore. They're not doing that thing today. Man, we need to get back to that. Jesus said, will I find faith when I come? Listen, build a little at a time. Mustard seed faith. The one thing a mustard seed does best is grow. So begin to grow your faith. You know what I'm talking about? Alrighty, God bless. We'll see you again next time with another great message right here, Crossing the Middle Ministry.